The Heat were without Jimmy Butler in Orlando on Wednesday, but after a slow start and despite a late game comeback by the Magic, Miami dominated with incredible defense, amazing three-point shooting, and Tyler Herro's 28 points to win a big game versus a division rival. We break down the game and answer your questions on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. I'm an NBA media member and editor at allyoucanheat.com. And joining me as always, it's a longtime NBA reporter and someone who doesn't believe any Heat lead is safe. It's David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We're recording this on a Wednesday night after the Heat beat the Magic 115-106, an impressive win after a disappointing loss to the Wolves on Monday. Tyler Herro helped the Heat bounce back with 28 points. The Heat shot nearly 52% on threes, their third best shooting performance from three for the season. Josh Richardson and Duncan Robinson each had 12 points. Haywood Highsmith finished with 15 points, all against the NBA's third-rated defense. David, let's start with Tyler Herro, who put on a show, got things going for the Heat with 19 points in the first half. What stood out to you about his game?
Look confident in his return, just his second game back from injury and nearly a triple-double. He just looked really fluid, just very comfortable. At first, it was a shaky start for Miami, and then Tyler started getting his shot going, and then just he got to that point, which we've seen him get to before, where he just looks unstoppable on offense. But I think it was perhaps his most complete game of the season, not just chipping in with the offense, obviously, but contributing with rebounds, assists, making the other players around him get into their spots, helping them feel comfortable offensively, looking to get other guys going. And defensively, I think was one of his best games of the season too. Had a number of passes that he broke up by jumping passing lanes. He was really good on ball defense, switching onto guys like Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. and others and making things uncomfortable for them. And he kept it out of foul trouble. And with him out of the game, that's where Orlando mounted their comeback without Tyler in there. So I think it was his best game of the season.
Funny that we're both going to start a little bit with his defense, because that's what stood out to me too. His team defense, I thought, was really good. It was a little bit of a rocky start for him and everybody else. Right. The Heat got beat backdoor a couple of times in that first quarter, but then I thought they locked in. They called a timeout. They kind of, had a break, got things situated, and figured it out. Tyler Herro did not get credited for a steal in this game, but I thought he was responsible for, 2 or 3 different Magic turnovers because of his defense. And I don't think he cares about not getting the steal credit. I don't think he got so pumped up off of a deflection that led to a Magic turnover that isn't going to show up in the box score. But I love that he was excited about it. And you know who else loves that he was excited about it? Eric Spoelstra and the rest of that coaching staff, because that's the kind of thing that they want to get from him. He knows how to jump these passing lanes. Like I said this earlier before he got hurt this season, it feels like he's found his voice defensively. He's never going to be a guy who can get a stop one-on-one consistently, although he had one against McDaniels the other night, and he was quite strong one-on-one tonight in various matchups, but that's not going to be his thing, right? He's always going to get picked on that end. But if you can create turnovers and be a good team defender, be in the right spot, be on rotation, be on a string, that's how he could be at least average defensively across other positions. So good game from Tyler Herro defensively, but again, offensively was where he paced the Heat. 10 points in the first quarter, 3 assists in the first quarter. Was really the only one who had anything going in terms of off the dribble. Haywood Highsmith scored, I think he made 4 of his 3-pointers in the second quarter. A couple different guys got going in the first quarter, but it was all basically off of what Tyler Herro was doing. And when you have him creating his own shot and creating shots for others, this is what Miami's offense needed. And the Orlando Magic defense is very good. And they're very similar to Minnesota's defense in that they're long and they're disruptive and they get you out of the spots that you want to get to. They force you off the 3-point line. They funnel you to the basket where all their size can take over. Tyler Herro had 25 points against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He was the only one that looked unbothered against the number 1 defense in the league. And he didn't look very much bothered at all by the number 3 defense in the league tonight either.
No, I think he was part of a huge run in that second quarter and third quarter where they kind of extended their leads. They were up by 22 at one point. I'm sorry. They actually pushed it to 25 later in the game too. But I mean, they were just incredible. And he was such a big part of that But again, I think his playmaking was such an underrated aspect. Like, we're going to look at the 28 points in his overall offense, which was incredible. But the fact that he was able to get everybody else going too, and really just a very smooth running offense against a very good defense. It took Miami, as we both said, a minute to kind of figure it out. But once they kind of realized, okay, Orlando has a size advantage, as many teams do, but they slowed down, got to their pace, and then figured out maybe slow down actually might be inaccurate, because I think they were kind of trying to hold to a similar pace that Orlando plays to, as far as trying to attack the basket early and often. And I think it helped them to a certain degree, especially with Tyler feeling it as effectively. Yeah. I think he did a really good job in that. And then when Duncan came in and played some minutes as the kind of ostensible point guard for this team, he really helped out a lot. We'll talk about him in the next segment, because I think he had a big game for him as a playmaker and as a scorer.
You mentioned they figured it out. They figured it out with about 6.5 minutes left in the second quarter, because from there to halftime, they scored on 12 straight baskets, did not miss a shot in the final 6.5 minutes of that second quarter. I'm just going to go down the list. The game's tied at 36 with 6.5 minutes left in the game. Thomas Bryant makes a running dunk off of a Haywood Highsmith assist. Duncan Robinson hits 3 free throws after getting fouled by Anthony Black. He then hits a pull-up jumper on the very next possession. The Heat go up by 3 at that point. Tyler Herro, an 11-foot pull-up jump shot on the next possession. Tyler Herro again on the next possession hits a turnaround jumper from the mid-range. Then Duncan Robinson again, this time assisted by Tyler Herro on a layup. After that, Haywood Highsmith, a three-pointer assisted by Tyler Herro. After that, Haywood Highsmith, a three-pointer. This one assisted by Josh Richardson. After that, Tyler Herro making a running pull-up jumper from pretty far out. No, that was the running one. The corner was, later in the
yes, that's right.
And then you got a Thomas Bryant hook shot, another 28-footer from Duncan Robinson, so a three-pointer for Duncan. Josh Richardson hits a three-pointer, and Tyler Herro with a mid-range jumper to close out the half. They go from tied at 36 to up by 18, 68-50 at halftime. That broke the game open. I know the Magic made a little bit of a run there at the end of the fourth quarter. I never really felt like the game was in danger. It was a little too late by the Magic. There just wasn't enough time left on the clock for them to really push it and make it a clutch time game, even though they cut the lead to 7 points at one point. But it was still a really good Heat win on the road. And look, the Magic are a really good team. It really helps to shoot 52%, 15 of 29 from three-point range. We obviously mentioned Tyler Herro. He was 4 of 5 on threes after going 1 for 6 against Minnesota. So that three-point shot got back real quick. Caleb Martin made his only shot from three-point range. Kyle Lowry was 1 for 2. But in addition to Tyler Herro, it was Josh Richardson going 4 for 8, and then Haywood Highsmith going 4 for 9. 9 three-point attempts for Highsmith in this one. I know we'll talk about him here in a little bit too, but the three-point shooting, obviously, I don't know that the Heat can repeat that, but they've had now, I think this is their 4th game shooting better than 50% this season, and they are still the number 1 rated team in terms of three-point shooting percentage this season. So this is a good three-point shooting team. I think the difference tonight was obviously you go from shooting almost 40% for the season to almost 52% for the season. They only did it on 29 attempts. But yeah, I thought the quality of the looks were good, and this team continues to have a strength in terms of three-point shooting.
It was a weird game in many ways, because again, there was that slow start, and then you think with Orlando's overall size advantage that maybe they might be able to continue to dominate. And while they were pretty evenly matched after they blew that game open, they really did kind of keep control over the game in a way. I know a lot of Heat fans have some PTSD about large leads being blown, and wasn't
including yourself.
Convinced.
Can I just read the text message?
Yeah. Yes.
You texted me in the third quarter, blowing this lead is going to suck. And that's why I introduced you as the man who has no faith in a big lead. And by the way, I tweeted in the third quarter too. Hey, I said, new strategy, go up by so many points that you could still get outscored by 10 points in the fourth quarter and still hang on to a win. And that's basically what happened in this one. What was Miami outscored by in the fourth quarter in total? 8 points.
Okay.
It was 34-26. They were outscored. So almost 10 points on the nose. So new strategy, just blow the doors off the opponent in the first 3 quarters to the point where even if you blow the lead in the fourth quarter, you could still hang on to the W.
I didn't think they were going to be able to hold it on. I mean, it's certainly tough without Jimmy Butler in there, and I am guilty of it. I am guilty of it. I was a prisoner of the moment. But you know what? They did a really good job in the fourth quarter, doing just enough, kind of slowing things down at the end. And they got very lucky that Orlando also shot extremely poorly. Luck
Yes.
maybe not the right word, because again, defensively they did a really good job closing out, pressuring guys and things of that sort, putting the ball in the wrong hands to shoot those threes. And the Magic don't have a great 3-point shooter on that roster either. So
that's the thing.
I think I think that was it
you're not going to get
helped.
Banchero and Wagner going 0 for 7 combined from 3-point range. Now, Wagner's a very is a good 3-point shooter. Banchero is a streaky one, but them going 0 for 7 is a little rare and fortunate for Miami. But hey, you do what you got to do, and you come away with a big division win. All right, credit cookies is next. Plus, did Haywood Highsmith just take his starting job back? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by our partners over at eBay Motors. They've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. Let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. We've got Brandon Podziemski over at Golden State, Tari Eason of Houston, Grayson Allen with the Phoenix Suns, James Wiseman, and Malachi Branham. Do you have a pick among those? I know we've been talking about Easton a lot. Pods, I think he got hurt in the most recent win by Golden State over the Boston Celtics. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to contribute as much as he has, but he's been a really solid addition to that Warriors lineup. Anybody else that really stands out there?
No, I mean, if Pods comes back, the underrated thing about him is he's a good offensive rebounder for a team that thrives on those. And so that's a real quick way to get more playing time for Steve Kerr and Steph Curry and that group is, hey, get some offensive rebounds, create some chaos possessions for us that lead to Steph Curry open threes. If you can get Pods, I still think even if the injury keeps him out for a couple of games, grab him now for the long term. There's a whole lot season left.
Great point. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. You picked your car, you love your car, you depend on your car to get from point A to point B, to take you on family trips and do all kinds of things that you like to do, especially now around the holidays. So many people are traveling, driving to places to get presents or buy food or go to parties and events and stuff like that. You need your car. You want your car looking great. So that's why you go to eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, and exclusions do apply.
Welcome back to Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Well, David, it's time for the tastiest segment of Locked On Heat. We're talking after a Miami Heat win, which means we get to hand out some credit cookies. We already talked about Tyler Herro.
Yes, we did.
3 cookies?
3 cookies seems right. I've got 4, possibly 5 players that I think are cookie worthy tonight. And I think
I have 5. Okay.
If you have the 5th, then I think that's why Tyler only gets 3, because it was either 3 or 4 for Tyler, considering his overall game.
I would love to give Tyler Herro more cookies. He's not had an opportunity to have many cookies given to him because he missed 18 straight games. So he's in a bit of a cookie deficit right now, and it's the holidays, and everybody should use more cookies in the holidays. But
in a cookie deficit, yeah.
We're all in a cookie deficit until now. I could use a cookie. But 3 credit cookies for him is fine for now. Maybe we can add another one later if we have one laying around. But 3 cookies for Tyler Herro. I've got no other notes on Tyler Herro. I love seeing him in this offense. You know, we talked a little about, we talked mostly about his first half stuff, but in the third quarter, I was reminded of his like little jab step baseline jumper that he has that is sort of turned into a patented shot of his over the last couple of seasons. And you add that, the mid-range stuff, the pick and roll stuff, you found Bam and a couple other, and Thomas Bryant a couple different times on those pick and rolls. He had a nice pick and pop with Bam Adebayo. It's just the playmaking, the baseline jumpers, the shot creation for him is so vital to this Heat offense. It just breathed life into the Miami Heat in this game. He was the biggest reason for Miami's win. It feels like we're shortchanging him with just the 3 cookies, but we only have 10 to hand out, so we'll stick with 3 for now. I've got 2 to Bam Adebayo. What do you think?
Ooh, let me check down my list here. No, I don't have Bam at all on my list.
Huh.
I do not have Bam at all. I've got, I'll tell you the 5 players I've got. I've got Tyler, I've got Haywood Highsmith, Duncan Robinson. I know they're both on your list, but I've also got a cookie to Josh Richardson and 2 to Thomas Bryant.
Okay, I didn't have any to Thomas Bryant, but I admittedly am probably I think I'm overlooking him. I thought Bam, I mean, look, he had the second most points on the team. It wasn't a great Bam game, but it wasn't a bad Bam game. It was 18 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought he defended Wendell Carter Jr. really well. Granted, it was
very well.
I think it's his first game. I think it was his first game back from that injury. But he did in a game without, you didn't have Jimmy Butler, you didn't have Kevin Love. He was really the only interior defensive presence for Miami, and I thought that was really important, especially that backline defense against the switches and all the things that they want to do. You never really saw Paolo Banchero get downhill. There was a lot going on there that was defending Paolo Banchero, but Bam was also a part of that. So if we want to give 1 cookie to Bam and 1 cookie to Thomas Bryant and split the difference, okay.
Cookie deficit. Well, you can't have that during the holidays. And I think like Bam's game was really good. And I know we've kind of used this barometer in the past. Is like when your star complement player is sitting out the game, you have to step up. When it was Bam who was hurt, we expected Jimmy to step up, and we kind of held that against him. I think we kind of do the same thing. We should do the same thing rather against Bam. Although I think he had a good overall game, and it was really a strong performance. It just wasn't superstar Bam, which is something that we've come to expect from him.
I mean, Herro he was a superstar for Miami United. He was the star that stepped up in Jimmy's absence. Bam did what he had to do defensively. Sing Thomas Bryant's praises a little bit, because we haven't gotten a lot of Thomas Bryant credit cookies this season.
Yeah, 5 straight dunks from him. I think he was really impactful again in those minutes. Really good on pick and roll situations. There was I think the first play that they went to Bryant was a Duncan Robinson pass that sailed way past him, and it was just a poorly timed pass. And then Duncan and Tyler and everybody else kind of figured it out and said, you know what? Let's get Thomas the ball in his exact spots, and they did. And I think he did a really good job of cutting to the rim defensively. And I know we've done the same thing with Caleb Martin. He was still pretty poor. Not so much on his man-to-man defense, but I think overall, as far as like boxing out, he gave up a couple of plays. Was Orlando was trying to keep pace with Miami, and I think that was due to box outs on either Franz or Mo Wagner. It happened once, I think, with Wendell Carter Jr. too. So there were a couple of moments there where Bryant wasn't great defensively, but overall, I think it was an okay game from him.
It was a better than usual game for him defensively, which is a low bar. But it was enough to keep him on the floor, right? And that's all you're looking for. Like the Thomas Bryant formula is produce. He had 12 points on 5 or 7 shooting, so there's your production. He had 5 rebounds in 17 and a half minutes. Okay, I'll take that. 3 of those are offensive rebounds. Extra possessions, we'll take that. And just don't be horrible defensively. Like, there was a couple possessions in a row where he actually stood up. I don't remember which Magic players it was, but stood up a player under the rim, held his ground against a big man, didn't allow the basket, and on the next play, just again was positionally in the right spots and forced Orlando into a tough shot. So there's possessions where it also looked good for him.
I think it was Pataza. I think that was the big man he stood up there. Yeah. So let's move on to Josh. I think he was great. I think he was. Look, again, his point of attack defense continues to be a problem with Orlando's quick guards. I think they were trying to get past him, and I think Richardson, perhaps more than any defender, was the beneficiary of Orlando's real poor shooting, because despite being wide open at times, often from a Richardson miscue, I think they didn't capitalize on those opportunities. So that it looks better in the final tally, but individually he still has some problems on defense. But overall, I think his spark as a playmaker and scorer, like when Miami needed a bucket, even as they were trying to extend their lead, Richardson was a big part of that. And even as Orlando kept chipping in, I think, Josh had to step up as a scorer. You texted me, you were wondering, why is Josh continuing to get these minutes? And I think part of it is, obviously they were shorthanded without Jimmy Butler and Kevin Love. So he's going to get a little bit more opportunity, but they're looking for Josh to provide some scoring punch there. And I don't know. I know a lot of Heat fans kind of question the Josh minutes. maybe why he's playing more than Kyle Lowry and things of this sort. But I think overall he had a pretty solid game, and I think it's cookie worthy.
He went 4 of 8 from 3-point range. He's
4 of 12 overall, 4 of 8.
He's 8 for 17 from 3-point range over his last 3 games. That's why he continues to get minutes. He's making jumpers. I had 2 cookies for him. Is that too many?
Same. No, I have 2 as well.
I have 2 to Haywood Highsmith. His defense, I thought, tonight was back to what we had seen kind of at the beginning of the year with him when he kind of earned that starting job at power forward. He came off the bench tonight. No Kevin Love, no Jimmy Butler, but Spo going with Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Caleb Martin at the forward spots. So Haywood Highsmith, it seems like he's lost the starting job. It wasn't just a matchup thing with Minnesota and all these things. He's been coming off the bench for a while, but he was coming back from that tailbone injury. And then obviously with those matchup stuff, I was like wondering, is his job, did he lose the starting job there? And it appears that he has, but he played 30 minutes tonight, which are the most minutes he's played since coming back from the injury. 4 for 9 from 3-point range. Again, made all 4 of those 3-pointers, I believe, in the second quarter. There was a point in that second quarter, David, where the Heat went to him on 3 straight possessions for 3 straight 3-pointers. And I was kind of thinking, I'm like, Orlando's kind of winning these possessions. He made 2 of the 3, which is a good outcome, obviously. But I was like, Orlando's probably going to live with this stuff if it's not Bam or Tyler or Jaime taking these shots instead. But hey, he did what he had. He did his job. He made the shots that he had to make. Also had 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Tracking stats, had 6 contested shots in this game, which is a good number, and 3 deflections in this game too. So he's disruptive, and that was the whole point. And so it was a good game from him. We're running long here on the credit cookie segment. I have 2 cookies for him. Do you have 2 cookies for him as well?
I do. I've got. I want to just say I think he did a great job on Paolo Banchero. I think Banchero is probably going to recognize him as that random player who just plays him really well, and he was able to use his speed and strength to kind of keep him off balance. More of a finesse player. I like Carmelo Anthony. I know that's a comp that gets thrown out there a lot, and I think just Haywood did a really good job. I also got 2 cookies to Duncan. I realize now.
Let's do the Duncan Robinson thing in the next segment. And it might not, I'm trying to think of a tease. And it might not be the reason you're thinking. That's coming up next on Locked On Heat. I don't know. Giving it a shot here.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, the holidays are a great time for a lot of people, but for others, it's not so great. It's also a difficult time. There's a lot of questions that you might be going through, or just situations with your family that might be causing you some trouble and some problems along the way. And you want somebody else to talk to. You want to be able to elaborate on these problems or just discuss them fully. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of people who go through this, especially around the holidays, because it's the bleak time of year and the weather and the darkness and just the overall feeling of the holiday spirit that maybe you might not be feeling. And if you want to talk to a professional about that, then BetterHelp is the option for you. I know a friend of mine had to go through some issues. He went through some issues and he wanted to talk to somebody. And I told him about BetterHelp, found somebody with their easy to use site. And it was just a real joy for him. He was able to talk through everything. He feels so much better. He's just comfortable, and it's become a part of his life, as therapy often should for so many of us. If you've benefited from therapy, this is the site for you. You can absolutely enjoy talking to somebody. And it's just, again, it's very easy to do. Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You don't have to fit into a therapist schedule or see whether or not you can get an appointment. It's all about making time for yourself and then finding the right person who helps you out. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So go to BetterHelp. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Welcome to Locked On Heat. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, scroll down, hit that like button for us. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about tonight's game. And if you're not already listening on your favorite podcast app, you could do that. Apple Podcast, Spotify. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions using that hashtag AskLOHeat on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram, Locked On Heat on Instagram. It's also lockedonheat@gmail.com. Before we get to those questions, though, David, Duncan Robinson is the proud earner of our last what is it? 2 credit cookies? I have one more credit cookie, I think.
Yeah, you have one for him because you gave Josh 2. I recognize now that I meant to only give 1 to Josh and 2 to Duncan.
So you screwed up the math.
I was off. I had in my list here. I said either 4 for Tyler or 3 for Tyler, depending on whether or not we give 1 to Josh. And I kind of miscounted there as we wound up splitting it between Thomas Bryant and Bam.
So I wasn't one that messed up the math this time. Is this the first time ever in Locked On?
Nobody messed up the math. It's no messing
up.
It
sounds like you messed it up. That's a win for the West heads out there.
There's no win. There's no mess up here. It's just totally normal accountability. That's all. I mean, this is what Heat culture is all about: accountability. You know, I'm sorry. If you like
messing up lines.
If you want to pass the buck, that's Celtics math right there. That's that you take that up with your Locked On.
How many quarters did you win of this podcast? Does that count?
Oh. No, that's for you. Again, the Locked On Celtics mentality. You win quarters or segments. I come up with a big game. I finish strong. That's all that matters.
Right, anyway, I've won the first 2 segments, but we'll see how this third segment goes. But I know you wanted to talk about Duncan Robinson's passing here. I mean, let me just say before the passing is a good point. He went 1 for 1 from 3-point range, 4 for 5 overall in this game for 12 points. He had 3 rebounds, but he had the 6 assists. So wax poetic on the 6 assists, please.
I think he was just great. We talked about the diversification of his game, and it's something that he's had in his bag for a while, but he keeps working at it. And now this is the first game between the Heat and the Orlando Magic, and I think they weren't prepared for this version of Duncan Robinson. Perhaps he's still not showing up as a playmaker on opposing scouting reports or anything like that. If you're not doing that research as an NBA team, I don't know what you're doing.
He told us yesterday that he still will go against opponents, and they'll be like, wait, when did you start making layups? When did you start driving the basket? He had like a Euro step kind of floater, underhand scoop finish thing, and I was like, that's not even a real move. That's like the Duncan Robinson special right there. I'm not even sure what to call it. I was like, it's almost a Euro step. It's kind of a floater, but it's underhand. Like, I'm not even sure what it is. But yeah, I mean, the playmaking
picture perfect is what it was. Yeah, and the playmaking is just, again, he's got really good chemistry to be able to adjust. I think in mid-game from tossing lobs or whatever, working the pick and roll action with Bam Adebayo to doing so with Thomas Bryant and finding success in that regard. Mm-hmm. And I think also recognizing when the screen was going away from him and being able to drive to the basket for those 4 layups, like he just looks really good. I mean, he looks really comfortable out there, and I think it's just his best overall, one of his better overall games. I know he's had some big games of late, but for him to come off the bench with a stronger performance, Duncan Robinson is back. There's nothing else you can say.
Let's get to our listener questions. This one comes in from Brian, who writes in, safe to say Tyler Herro isn't going to be coming off the bench anytime soon. So is the expected when healthy, fingers crossed emoji, starting lineup expected to be Lowry, Herro, Butler, Caleb Martin, and Bam Adebayo? As a reminder, the Heat started Kyle Lowry in his game back, Tyler Herro, Jaime Jaquez Jr. in Jimmy Butler's place, Caleb Martin, and Bam Adebayo. So what do you think? Or I'll go back to the tease that I had earlier. Did Haywood Highsmith do enough in this one, playing 30 minutes and mostly down the stretch in a game that Caleb Martin only played 18 minutes, 5 points, 5 rebounds for him? Haywood Highsmith just outplayed him. Did Highsmith do enough then to challenge Caleb Martin and get back into that starting group?
Challenge him, yes, but he's not going to be inserted as a starter. I think Spo feels comfortable with Caleb, given his production in the past and the fact that Haywood continues to find a way to impact the win or the game overall, even if he's coming off the bench. And I think that's the thing with Haywood, is that you don't need to get him to the flow of things. He finds his way, especially because he can hang his hat defensively and do so much in that end. And if the 3-point shot is falling as it did tonight, that's just the cherry on top. You live with that, but you don't necessarily count on it. I think you're more relying at this point on what Caleb can produce, and that's probably why he only played 18 minutes. No need to kind of put him out there any longer, knowing that he's going to be perhaps dealing with some lingering knee issues for the rest of the season. You put Haywood out there, who's kind of working himself back into form, just a second game back, and I think he looks really good out there. And I don't think you have to start Haywood in order to get the best version of Haywood, and it just kind of contributes alongside everybody else defensively in that second unit. So I think I think he's comfortable in the role that he's at right now. And it's not going to matter either, because we know that Caleb's going to miss some time if he continues to start. And if he does, then Haywood is a natural fit to kind of take over as a starter.
I will be interested to see what happens when Kevin Love comes back. He missed tonight's game with a stomach illness. He had to go to a doctor for it. So I don't know how severe it is, if it's going to keep him out for a while. Fortunately, the game Friday against the Hawks is a home game, so you're not gonna have to deal with traveling and stuff like that. So maybe he'll be available for Friday night. I expect him to be available Friday night, but you never know. In that game, like I said, is against the Atlanta Hawks. We talked about maybe is Kevin Love the permanent starter? Was it just a matchup thing against Minnesota? I don't really know, but the way he's shooting the ball is so important when you're talking about spacing the floor around Jimmy and Bam and his playmaking and the passing and all these things. And his partnership with Jimmy has been so strong that I do think there's something to be said about maximizing Kevin Love's time with Jimmy Butler, right? And then you kind of stagger him and Jimmy, and then you have Bam and Duncan kind of lining up in their minutes too as you kind of get into your rotation patterns. But Atlanta, they were playing Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu together, but tonight against Houston, they went back to sort of the Clint Capella, Okongwu off the bench, DeAndre Hunter and Sadiq Bey at your forward spots. So maybe against Atlanta Friday night, you go back to going quote unquote small with either Caleb Martin or Haywood Highsmith, but I still wouldn't rule out Kevin Love getting those starters minutes either, So I don't know. Spo's got options here. I think it's like a three-way race between Caleb Martin, or a three-way decision rather, between Kevin Love, Caleb Martin, and Haywood Highsmith. The one wrinkle there is that, like, okay, do you really want to play Thomas Bryant and Orlando Robinson a bunch of minutes? Would you rather just have Kevin Love as your backup center and kind of get into those pairings later on? I think there's all value. Like it's, there's a reason to go in any direction. Spo can go in any direction and kind of feel good about it. I do like Caleb coming off the bench more. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen. I just personally like Caleb coming off the bench more. Less wear and tear on his body. You could play him in a little bit more of a perimeter-based role, which he's better at than playing the forward role. And I like Haywood Highsmith as a starting four. I think it just works. I think it makes sense, especially in a starting lineup with Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, all guys who need the ball in their hands to various degrees. Like Haywood doesn't. Haywood could just lock up. Like you said, he's happy in any role. Caleb Martin does need the ball sometimes, like in order to be the most effective, because I think Highsmith is a better defender than Caleb Martin, but Caleb Martin's a better offensive player. But I think there's something to be said about that second unit with Caleb and Jaime kind of running things. I like that group. So I don't know. I think Highsmith made a case because he had basically lost the starting job. He was not playing well for a while there, and then the injury obviously was a wrench in it. But I think he's playing himself back into contention to start. So we'll see what happens.
I don't see him starting, but I you know what? Does it really matter anyway?
It does.
Like,
no, I think it matters for this year. I'm done. I think the starting lineup matters for this team because they have so many different options that your starting lineup kind of sets the tone for your rotation pattern going forward. I actually do think I'm usually on your side. Like, it's not really how you start, it's how you finish and whatever. But I think the starting group does matter for this team, especially because the first quarter has been a strength of theirs and the fourth quarter hasn't. So you want to start these games strong because that's kind of the only way you win games this season. So, all right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast app.